Namaste. We have plenty of questions. So let's start with a question from Beamer. I'm suffering from anxiety disorder and I'm on pills for it. I have a lot of tension in my body, and the more I try to relax the body, the more tense I become. I have tried Sakshi Bhav for limited effect. Please advise. First of all, I'm sorry to hear about your condition. And if the doctor has diagnosed that you have anxiety disorder, any kind of disorder it's all a matter of degrees. There is nothing called a perfect condition. So when we see that certain parameters are beyond the normal threshold, we call it a disorder, or the experts call it a disorder. So if the doctor has diagnosed and confirmed that you have anxiety disorder and has prescribed pills, and if you believe that he has paid sufficient attention to you and to your condition, then you please go ahead and continue that, as long as you are sure that the doctor is giving you attention. Because these days they are all overworked, and most of them don't have enough time to do deep research on the patient's condition before they prescribe a medicine. So I won't blame them for that. But what you should also do is, we should not depend completely on external help. We too can do something. The subtle is always more powerful than the gross, and the gross is controlled by the subtle. So that is applicable in the case of bodies as well. The physical body, the signs that you have, that is a lot of tension, is just a consequence of the anxiety that you feel in the mind. So how do we tackle this? You say you have practiced Sakshi Bhav. I'm not sure for how long you have practiced and for how long you have this condition. What I would recommend is, focus on the anxiety when you have it. You cannot prepare for it. The moment you have it, that time is the time to practice. That time, without judging, without thinking about it, directly feel, directly focus, pay attention on what you are feeling that time. Suppose right now I have anxiety. How does it feel like? Don't try to comment about it, or don't try to make it into a verbal commentary in the mind. Just focus your complete attention on it. Don't try to run away from it. Be completely paying attention and see what happens. Because when you pay attention, there is something living which you are putting on that state in which you are. The power of attention is like a focused light, and the prana flows wherever you put attention. So wherever you put prana, that's a tremendous force. And to the extent you can focus your attention on a problem or on any challenge, physical or mental, that much more you'll have control over it. Instead of thinking that or imagining that you will be a witness, try this. Face it completely without any judgment. Mind would say, oh no, I cannot bear it, let me run away. But just be with it. Just be with it for as long as you can. And try this again and again and again. And gradually see what happens. Don't reject the doctor's advice. Please follow that also, provided he's giving you time and attention. One more practical advice or practical recommendation for anxiety disorder would be to try and serve others. If you look around, you will definitely find some or the other person who is less privileged than you. So try to grab those opportunities and serve in whatever way possible, even in the mind, thinking about the welfare of others. These create a sense of peace and serenity in the mind. because selfishness and selfish desires create anxieties. That is for sure, because it is never going to give you fulfillment. So one way of attaining peace and tranquility, which is essential to do anything efficiently, is to think more about others and less about one's own self. Moving on to the next question. This is a question from Sudhir Kumar. Why my desires don't get fulfilled and the same desire comes again and again, and the same level of lure of false pleasure again comes in my mind? How to get out of it? Please guide me. With gratitude, Sudhir Chaudhary. Human beings have this wonderful spark of divinity which enables them to fulfill whatever desire that arises in them. It seems unbelievable at first, but this is a trick, a trap, and also an infinite possibility. Whatever we desire, it gets fulfilled. It all depends on the intensity. Suppose we have a desire and we are putting effort to fulfill that desire. If it doesn't get fulfilled, it only indicates that the effort required you have not put to that extent. So you need to redouble the efforts, and then you will find that you will get whatever you desire. May not be in this life, then next life, because desires are the cause of rebirths. So you will come again and again and again, and until it is fulfilled, you be at it. What we call talent is nothing but what efforts we have put in the past, is by birth itself. So that field or that particular activity becomes easier for you, and we think that it is some kind of talent. It is nothing but cumulative effort from the past. So that is what we have to do if you are really bent on fulfilling the desire. Now, why did I say it is a trap? It is a trap because it is desires that keep you bound. It's like a veil, and it is very tricky because it removes your sense of contentment. And we mistakenly think that the peace and the joy that comes at the fulfillment of desire, we mistakenly think that it is coming from the desire, but it is not. At the end of the desire, you get that joy. But the joy was always there if you did not desire anything in the first place. This also you can experiment in your life and see. You need not take my word for it. Whenever you are completely content, there is a spontaneous joy, which is a reflection of your real nature. The moment a desire comes and you feel that craving to fulfill that desire, all that joy is gone. And then you have to wait it out until you have fulfilled that desire. And only then you attain that peace. But mind comes and says, look, because that desire was fulfilled, that is what made me happy. But that is not the truth. If you look at it carefully, you will find out. The same desire comes again and again, and the same level of lure of false pleasure again comes in my mind. That is because if you desire for yourself, for this little ego, it is always unsatiated. You can never satisfy it because it is based on a false precept. So all these selfish desires, which seemingly gives you fulfillment when you try, it only fuels the desires even more, just like adding ghee or oil onto a fire, into a fire. If you add to quench fire, you cannot quench it with petrol, right? Same way, selfish desires increases the vasanas or the latent impressions that it leaves. Every time you attempt to fulfill a desire, it leaves a trace. It doesn't die out completely. It leaves a trace called vasana in the mind. And it's like a circle. So it keeps on repeating itself. And next time you'll have more and more you'll be inclined to pursue that desire. So that is why desirelessness is a must if you want to lead a spiritual life. Because we are trying to calm the lake of the mind. And these desires are like ripples. It doesn't die out. It just goes on a cycle. And the next time when it comes, if you are aware and you ignore it, it becomes attenuated, becomes weakened and weakened and weakened. So how to get out of it? Not by fulfilling your desires, but by seeing through this snare of the maya or the illusory nature. You can use your discernment, viveka, and see that the last time when I fulfilled it, what happened? How long did I enjoy it? So that way you can, while you are not so impulsive or that desire has not gained traction, before that you have to do this discernment so that you are ready and you are powerful enough to withstand the vega. In Sanskrit it is called vega. To withstand the vega of desire requires tremendous effort and strength. And that is why in the Gita it is said, that nara, that human being alone is sukhi and yukta, apt and satisfied, who can control the vega or that tremendous pull of kama and krodha, desires and anger, the cravings and anger, while living in the body. Praksharira vimokshanat. Even before he leaves the body, while in the body, if one can withstand the tremendous pull of lust or tremendous pull of other desires and cravings and also anger and not act upon it, only that person is yukta and that person is sukhi. Moving on to the next question. Dark Night says, my body gets heated while doing japa. Is this good sign or bad sign? Pranam. That depends on the technique you are using. If you are doing japa as prescribed by your guru, there is no question of body getting heated up. If you're exerting beyond what the body can take, or if you are rushing through it, only then this kind of reactions happen. Or if you're one day suddenly you're increasing the count, it could happen. So ensure that you create a blissful environment before you start japa around yourself. You can light incense sticks and be in a pleasant mood. You can create that mood using artificial help, external help. But once you start doing japa, you should imagine or you should realize that Nam Nami Abhed, as Sri Ramakrishna points out, the word or the japam, the mantra, is God Himself. So, when you are with japa, you are with God when you are repeating the mantra. So that gives tremendous joy in repeating the mantra. And if you are not in a stiff posture, the body should be relaxed, at the same time not so relaxed that you fall down sleeping or becomes lazy, not like that. So be in an erect pose where your neck and your upper body and your head is in a straight line. And then sukhasana, means that asana or the seat or the posture where you are comfortable. And then you practice japa. So it shouldn't happen. And the quantity of japam you should increase slowly so that the body gets tuned to it. And if your guru is, you have access to your guru, you should consult these things with your guru, your personal guru alone. and not go by what books say. So is this a good sign or bad sign? Depends. If you're tremendously you're doing hours and hours of japa and the body is getting heated, you should stop japa and allow it to cool down. Because the brain getting heated is not a good thing. Holy Mother says, the mind is everything. It's like a needle balance. If it goes this side or that side, life is wasted. Because no more effort is possible. Conscious effort is possible if the brain is deranged. So we should not exert it too much. Next question is from Vidshi. I keep hearing that vasanas create raga, dvesha, and raga, dvesha are the root cause of pain. How do we uproot vasanas from our daily life, from our life? Please give us some practical doable tips to tackle vasanas. So, if we read the Karma Yoga by Swami Vivekananda, he clearly mentions how the mind works. That is, how these impressions form habits. So vasanas are nothing but the previous desires. Once they are aroused, they don't die out completely. They leave a scar, which is called vasana, latent impression. So that is like a circle. It is going in a circle. So it again comes. Swamiji gives the example of you walk through a busy lane and you come across several people and you saw a familiar face. In the evening, you are trying to remember all the faces, and only that face which you had seen before, that comes again in your mind, flashes in your mind. So that vasana is strengthened. Then the more and more you think about it, more and more it gets strengthened, and next time it redoubles its power. So that is how vasanas work. So what is all this character building, etc.? You create more and more good samskaras by doing good to others, by being unselfish and trying to serve others in an unselfish way. You create good samskaras. Anything that makes you feel the unity with the rest of the world, that is a good karma, a virtue. And anything that makes you divided, that is sin or bad karma. So you create so much of this force of good impressions or vasanas that in spite of yourself, you are forced to do only good. Then your character is supposed to be established. So that is how we tackle the vasanas, because raga and dvesha comes mostly from selfish desires. Because the very sign of unselfishness is also detachment. You have nothing, no personal or vested interest in what you're doing. Then you do it out of love. In love there is no reaction, there is no attachment, raga, nor dvesha, no repulsion. So slowly, when your character is established, slowly you root out this raga, dvesha based living. And then you will enjoy a serenity and peace, and you will become more efficient in whatever you do when it is not arising out of a selfish interest or motive. Next question is from Ranchod Das Chanchar. Maharaj, Acharyas of Bhakti say that Bhakti is superior than Mukti, and we should always ask for Bhakti and not for Mukti to God. Even when in the scriptures also moksha is defined as ultimate, why then many Acharyas consider devotion and love and surrender to God to be greatest of all? Is this thought true? Please explain. See, there is this tremendous misunderstanding amongst many, pitting bhakti with mukti. It is true that those highly evolved sages and devotees have praised bhakti to such an extent, saying that I don't even need mukti, all I need is love for your lotus feet, etc., which is all absolutely fine and true. We are not trying to deny that. But what is bhakti? And what is the means to mukti? What is mumukshutva? What is that desire for liberation? So this devotion, it cannot be restricted to devotion to personal God. Even in Advaita, that Bhava is important, because that devotion alone gives power to fulfill your desire for liberation or for God, or for personal God, etc. So you being devoted to something is when you invest your prana and you take action, right? So you can be disinterested from everything and you can intellectually be convinced that liberation is the highest thing, moksha is the highest thing. But if you are not devoted to it, you will not take any action to liberate yourself. So that intense yearning and then the action that follows is all part of bhakti. So there is no question of pitting bhakti with mukti. And why is bhakti superior than mukti? Because if you have bhakti, mukti is easier. And if you don't have bhakti, when you don't have devotion to your ideal, it could be liberation, it could be a personal God, then there is no question of mukti, right? Because you will be lukewarm and half-hearted efforts you will put, because you are not intent. That intent is missing. That intent can be referred to as devotion. And with the intellect, Sri Ramakrishna would refer the intellectual pursuits as the outer court of the palace, and bhakti as the inner court. Bhakti has access to the inner court, because we all have this faculty of feeling, the emotion, and the heart is more capable of receiving the divine than the intellect. Intellect can give you so many ideas which you may never ever practicalize it in your life. But when the heart, if there is a pull in the heart, that leads you to act upon it. So that is why they have mentioned bhakti as superior. Just so that you get interested, you try to cultivate bhakti. It's not that ultimately bhakti is superior than mukti. And to a bhakta, for him to have devotion, he needs to consider that there is nothing higher than bhakti at that time. He doesn't even crave for anything else. So he's automatically liberated. And Sri Ramakrishna says that you cannot say that a bhakta at some point needs liberation. May not be. He may be completely fulfilled just serving the Lord without ever wanting to dissolve his ego at all. But that ego cannot harm him. It is the ripe ego, not the ego of the unripe nature, which is selfish. Why then many acharyas consider devotion and love and surrender to God to be greatest of all? Because surrender to God means what? You are no more, right? So selflessness is the greatest. So whether you are in the path of non-dual liberation, or you are in the path of bhakti, surrender is, even in Patanjali Yoga Sutras you find Ishvara Pranidahanatvat, right? Even there surrender to God is mentioned in Raja Yoga. Shine Kumar Mukherjee asks, Panchadashi uses the term Chidabhas, also known as reflected consciousness. That means consciousness reflects from our body, mind. The word reflection, it may be reflection of consciousness, light, sound, involves an object from where it is to be reflected and which is to be reflected. That is, consciousness, light, sound. That means reality is accepted. But Advaita declares there is only one reality, that is consciousness, not two. So the term reflected consciousness brings contradiction from the perspective of absolute reality. Please satisfy my query. First of all, from the perspective of absolute reality, there is no reflected consciousness. But while in ignorance or while in Maya, we see the duality. So you need some explanation. So while not from the perspective of absolute reality, but from the perspective of this relative existence, this explanation is given that it is a reflection, it's a reflected consciousness. And then again, to address the other point, which is, if anything is to be reflected, there has to be an object, the source, right? The source which is reflected. So if the universe is reflected, then there should be an original universe of which the reflection we are seeing, right? So the answer to that is, for Jada Darpan, or a dead mirror, it requires an object so that it can reflect it. But here it is a Chetan Darpan. It is consciousness itself that has become the mind and everything else, seemingly. So there is no question of two. It's like the clay horse and the clay rat and the clay pot. It's all made of clay. But as a clay horse, it is different from a clay mouse and a clay pot. So for transaction, for vyavahara, we may consider that it is different, but it is made of the same substance and seemingly made of, because it has been the realization of sages that once they realize the absolute Brahman, they see that there is nothing else that exists. So it's based on realization that they say that there is not two, there is only one. In the recent times, Sri Ramakrishna's experience we can see. He went one step further than all these Advaita acharyas and said that even this world is real because it is God. Nothing else exists. He said it is like someone negating, doing the process of neti to discard the steps and reach the roof, the terrace. But once he reaches the terrace, he comes down and finds that the stairs were made up of the same material as that of the terrace. So what he discarded, he accepts that it is the same thing. So due to ignorance or due to delusion, we thought there is separateness, and we reject that separateness and reach the ultimate. And then we come down and see that what we thought to be separate was nothing but Brahman itself. He also gives another simple example of snake in motion and snake while resting. So while inactive, we call it Brahman, and when it is doing Srishti, Sthiti, Pralay, we call it Shakti. Brahman and Shakti are the same. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. Next question. How do I stop thinking what people might be thinking about me? First and the foremost step is to stop worrying so much about yourself and engage your mind and body in service of others or an idea. And the idea, the more unselfish that idea is, what you're passionate about, if that affects others in a good way, then you devote your whole time and energy into it, and automatically your sense of self-esteem, etc. will be expanded. And you no longer will care about what others think about you. So the personality has to be developed first and then transcended. So you don't have to worry much, but at the same time, if you're not established in character, then you need to be constantly thinking, oh, what this person might say, if I do this, what that person might say. So the best thing is to avoid doing something which your conscience is not allowing. So that way you will develop that self-confidence, and then you will no longer care about what others think. And to some extent you have to, because if the society wants you to wear a dress and you walk around naked thinking that I don't care. No. So there is degrees in it, right? So you shouldn't be irrational and absurd about it. But at the same time, don't give undue importance to others' validation. You don't need any validation because ultimately these things don't matter. This is just a play. So in the play, somebody is a villain, somebody has a minor role, somebody is the hero, somebody has a major role. It's all fine. At the end of the day, nothing, all these things don't matter. All that matters is how you have made people feel and how you have loved. That's all that matters. Next question is, to be total awareness, be present, is a place where the mind doesn't exist. It is also a place of love, joy, and peace. If being is beyond mind, how does one experience peace, love, joy? One needs mind to experience these feelings, isn't it? Is it not paradoxical? It isn't paradoxical because you don't need the mind to experience peace, love, and joy. In spite of the mind is what you experience these things in spite of the mind. Or rather, at moments when the mind transcends its limited nature, that is, continuously thinking and worrying about the future or the past, when that stops, then only you can appreciate beauty. And beauty doesn't arise in the mind. Beauty arises from something beyond the mind. Same with joy, peace. That is why reality is called Sat Chit Ananda. It is existence, beingness. It is Chit. It is self-conscious. It is conscious of its existence. And it is also bliss. Uncaused bliss. It is not the product of or the effect or the consequence of some action. So it is not pleasure. It is bliss or joy. Uncaused joy. So that is all arising, seemingly arising, but it is actually always eternally present beyond the mind. So mind gets, when mind is steady and serene, it is pure, it gets a sense of your real nature, and the bliss leaks into the mind, and you think that the mind is experiencing the bliss. Then when the thoughts come back, you again think that, oh no, that was a good state, I want to be there again. So that is the mind wanting and craving to experience again what it experienced before. But it is not an experience and you cannot chase it. That is why any experience that you have, spiritual experiences, if you want to replicate it or repeat it, then that is a trap. That is a mental trap, which is an obstacle. Next question is from Paushali Mitra. Pranam Maharaj, I have questions regarding Bhava of Advaita. In several times came across that Sri Ramakrishna used to be in Bhava Mukh, be it Advaitic knowledge or devotional, and attained Samadhi. Also, I remember last week Swami Sarvapriyanandaji Maharaj also answered to one question that Advaita is also a Bhava. So is it being established in some kind of Advaitic meditation where no form is seen? Can you explain the Advaitic Bhava? Also, what is realization? So when Sarvapriyanandaji was answering that question, saying Advaita is also Bhava, he is not referring to any experience. Bhava in the sense, your attitude, or tan in Bangla, you can say tan, where you are pulled to, where your pranic forces are engaged, where you devote your whole energy. That is a bhava, right? It's not something intellectual. It is coming from the heart. So in that sense, Advaita is also a bhava. So that is not to be confused with bhava samadhi. Bhava samadhi is the culmination of such a bhav where he goes into ecstatic, dualistic samadhi, where there is a separation of a devotee enjoying bliss of communion with God. What is realization? Realization is when you are no longer there. Simple. When we feel right now that I'm a person and there is the rest of the world. In realization, you no longer feel as a separate entity in the world. It feels like you are, it's like a very distant image, a faint image for transactional purpose, if you still remain in the body after realization. Jiva and Mukti. Samarth Mishra asks, if we are the witness consciousness. Okay, this question was already answered in the previous video. Please turn on your notification, the bell icon, if you are not receiving the videos. Next question is from Vaijayanti Kokane. Sadha Pranam Swamiji Maharaj. I wonder, although it is always advised to sadhakas to get rid of ego, or let's say to transcend it, if so, then why in the first place the Divine Mother created ego in human beings? See, the why question, this is again the trick of the mind, Mind thinks that everything is having a cause and effect. So it can ask the question why. But in the divine play of the Divine Mother, you cannot ask for a cause, because that is not how it works. Even in the empirical realm, though we think that everything is caused and there is an effect, that is only up to a certain extent. If you dig deep, for example, from classical physics, someone goes to quantum level, then the equations change, everything changes. Even now the scientists are perplexed, how can emptiness create matter? Because what they see, what they thought to be empty, now they think it is dark matter. So all this objective studies are always creating new challenges, because we are assuming that there is a cause for everything. But when it is a play, you can never ask that question. So that is why it is called Maya, Anirvachaniya. You cannot explain it. It cannot be defined in terms of the logic or this limited rationality or limited sense of reason. Reasoning is a limited faculty. So the Bhakta can say that Divine Mother created the ego so that human beings can enjoy the bliss of liberation from the ego. So that's also a bliss, right? It's like then you would say that is irrational. No, it is not irrational, because see any games, for example. How do we create a game? We put a limitation, right? If you want to enjoy a cricket match and say everybody gets a ball and everybody can hit every ball and every thing is allowed, then it is no more fun. So you put certain restrictions, limited overs or limited, all those things, and then you enjoy. So without limitation, there is no enjoyment. The same way you can convince your mind, saying that there is this process of transcending one's ego, which gives you the bliss of, or the value of jiva and mukti. So that is why that is why Mother has bound us all with the kite of desires. And when one or two breaks that kite string, the Mother claps her hands. She doesn't say, oh no, I have to trap them again. No, that is not her intention. So it's just a play of the Divine Mother. Next question is from Ganesh Shukla. Swamiji, is conscious subject or both subject and object? Is appearance in consciousness? If yes, how both appear in consciousness? Again, this question how cannot be answered, or it's an invalid question while we are still the object. If you identify yourself as the consciousness, and then see if this question arises or not. So from this realm of duality, we explain it saying that the consciousness has become the subject and object. Excuse me. But it is always as it were. It has not really become the subject and object, because consciousness has never become plural. It is always singular. As even the scientists, I think Schrödinger, he found out that consciousness is a singular. Every one of us We'll have so many ways of defining ourselves, but all use the same term I to define ourselves, right? About us, we can say so many things, but when you say, who am I? Then it's the I, and it's the same feeling for everyone. There is another, not a question, a comment from Vidula Tawade. I'm sorry if I pronounced that name wrongly. Pranams and good evening. I feel a bit lost in my spiritual path. I live in Rome and I have absolutely no contact with any spiritual teacher. On my own, I'm plodding along my development. There are times I need to ask questions and receive answers to my quest. I hope your blog remains so that I can clarify and fortify my aspirations of a deeper understanding of Vedanta. I take this opportunity to thank you and all the monks of Ramakrishna Mission for the great work they are doing in making this great dharma available to us sadhikas on YouTube to help us in our study and understanding of Advaita Vedanta. I'm glad that we are of some service to you. Please feel free to ask, as long as I cannot guarantee that anything will remain forever. So as long as it lasts, let's use this platform, and you can post your questions here itself as a comment, and we will try and respond to it. There is another question. There is a question from Katrina Marie. First question. When doing Vedantic meditation, does it make sense to refer to the awareness as you within the thoughts, since that which is doing the referring is not really I? I am not the mind or intellect, therefore when the thoughts think I am Brahman, should they not be saying you are Brahman as they are referring to the witness? Excuse me. Let's keep it very simple. Does the thought come and tell you anything, or you witness the thoughts? It's you who witness the thoughts. It's you who is the awareness in which thoughts come and go, right? So there is no question of saying you are Brahman or I am Brahman, I am the witness. All these are thoughts. Thoughts don't matter. It's a recognition, recognizing that you are that awareness. It's not a thought. Pratyabhijna is the term used in Dakshinamurti Stotram. So it's a recognition. It's not a new knowledge or a new thought or you are not acquiring anything. It's who you are and you recognize it. So even when you meditate, don't be a meditator. That can also be an obstacle. So when you are sitting there as a meditator, then that is when these kind of doubts will come. You are not a meditator. You are the awareness in which everything is happening, even the meditation. So there is no longer two entities, one asking or affirming anything, right? There is a self, there is the seeing, there is the thoughts arising, and there is a spontaneous recognizing happening. There is no person, there is no reference point from which all this is happening. The reference point should also be witnessed, and it will go away. So there will be only witnessing, not a witness which is witnessing. Second question, what differentiates an avatara from a jiva? Are we not all appearances as individual beings in consciousness? We are taught not to think of these little bodies and minds of our individual selves as Brahman, only our awareness, but the little bodies and minds of an avatara are to be worshipped as Brahman. I am having a bit of trouble with the idea of worshipping Brahman in human individual form. First of all, let us not put any limitation to what Brahman or God can do or not do. Sri Ramakrishna says God is formless, God is with form, God is much more than what our minds can ever comprehend. It's like a wave or a bubble trying to comprehend the whole of ocean. So that is just impossible. This mind is limited. This tool of reasoning and all these faculties what we have to understand anything is too small a thing, too petty to understand and comprehend Brahman. But we can be Brahman. We cannot know it. We can be and be free from misery, be free from all this superstitions of calling yourself as a person. But we cannot know, because knowing is limitation. Anything, even a flower, when you say it's a rose, it's a limitation that you superimpose, just for a classification. You never know a rose in its entirety. Just for convenience, we name it, label it, and to contain it, to limit it, so that you can classify and use for transactional purposes. That's all we do. So any knowledge is limited, and where there is knowledge, there is ignorance. We have to transcend both knowledge and ignorance and be free, be Brahman. So from that point, now comes to the bodies and minds of an avatara. How do we take birth? Because of our desires. Our desires, the subtle body takes on newer and newer instruments to express those desires. Whatever is compatible with our own desires and the results of our desires, the karmic results. Based on that, we take a form and we take birth in a family suitable for that. And then again, we go on with birth after birth until we become desireless. So there is no guarantee that you will become desireless. You can go on endlessly until the end of the cycle of the whole of creation, of the projection. Everybody will be liberated at the end, but it's like someone who is hungry, he needs food right now, although everybody will get food if he waits. Now, an avatara's body and mind is not made like that. It's not a product of past desires or karma. Brahman, by using his inscrutable power, Shakti, condenses himself as a physical body, as a human being, and assumes all the limitations of a human being. The difference is we are bound and they are eternally free. Avataras can free themselves from those limitations by their mere will. So that whole process of their bodies and minds are different from ours. And another thing is, an avatara is kapal mochana. All our so-called karmic results and what our future holds for us, the results of what we have done in the past, all that can be wiped clean just by the grace of an avatara. That is why avatara is worshipped. Whereas normal jivan muktas can at most inspire you to follow the path of mukti. They cannot wipe out your they are not kapal mochana. They cannot change the destiny of your fate. What is written in the sense, whatever results are pending because of the karma you have already done, that they cannot do anything about it. Only avataras can do that. They can liberate you in a moment. So, Sri Ramakrishna gives the beautiful example. In olden days, these trains had these second class and other classes. The doors used to be locked from outside. So, the passengers, we are like that. Those passengers cannot go out on their own. Only when the doors are unlocked, they can get out. But in first class, their doors are not locked. They can anytime go out in a station. So that avataras can be considered like that. Next question is from Swama Peta. How can we know if we get connected to the past life, Swamiji? I'm not sure why you want to get connected to the past life, because you are at this moment condensed past. Whatever you are expressing, your eyes, your nose, everything is based on your past, right? So the past is there in you, in your physical body, in your mind, everywhere. Whatever past is required is there. In the past lives, all those karmas and all that has taken you where you are right now. So in spiritual journey, we do not bother much about the past or past lives, neither nor future lives. What is my state of mind and where my attention is right now, right here, in this moment, how consciously I am leading my life. That is all that matters. Swami Turiyanandaji used to say, even prarabdha karma, that the result of those karmas which you have done in the past, even that cannot affect a man who is alert, that is, who is conscious. So we should not sleepwalk through life, we should lead the life consciously. Sri Ramakrishna says, Manush, in Bangla, Manush is what is the word for human being. So, man should possess Man and Hush, only then he is Manush. Man means dignity and Hush means alertness. Man should possess dignity and alertness, only then he can be called a man. So this dignity is what? Dignity is that I am not this limited being. I would not act and behave in a way which is like a selfish being. No, I am unlimited. And everyone around me is also, I am seeing this difference, but ultimately there is only one consciousness. So that way we will be dignified in our dealings with others, and also we will be alert. Only then we can be called a human being, says Sri Ramakrishna. Next question is from Dhiraj Shetty. When one knows from his heart and soul that the self-realization is the only goal striving for, when he knows the path and means, when he has prioritized it in his head and heart, not practice, yet failed to practice it for a necessary duration on a daily basis, what would be your advice to such a person? First thing is, start slowly and try to build up a habit, because why we are not able to practice is because we are habituated with our existing condition, and we somehow or the other enjoy it, all because that is the only reason why we are not practicing. Suppose you are taking a cup of coffee, about to drink, and somebody says there is poison in it. Will you say, okay, let me realize it first that there is poison, or I have already lifted it up, so I cannot keep it back? No, you just drop it, right? Because you have realized the value of that advice. You know that poison is dangerous. It has become like an instinct. Same way, when you put your prana and your, your convictions has to become instincts. In fact, Swami Vivekananda tells in Rajasthan, I think, Jaipur Raja or somebody asked this question, what is education? And Swamiji said, education is when the ideas that you have become so ingrained in you that it becomes like an instinct. That is education. So when one knows from his heart and soul, if one really knows from heart and soul, there is no question of not practicing. Because what is the sign of knowing from heart and soul? Action. Action is the sign, right? If somebody is poor, so much poor that he has to remain starved, he cannot even get food, and somebody says, you do this, you will get money. Will you just take it and say, okay, let me try and do it little by little? You will immediately plunge into it. Same way, you feel that burning hunger, the pang of God realization. If that has not come to you, then it is not yet time. You may have to suffer a little more before you get blows, and then you take to spirituality. Because everybody is going to get it at some point or the other, if they are selfish, if they are in the pursuit of pleasure. Because pleasure is seemingly satisfying, but it will always create that burning for more and more and more, and discontent and anxiety will be the result. So you start slowly and put this thought in the brain and in the mind. Keep a regular routine, that is every day, even for 5 minutes. Don't go back. Slowly you got to gain the ground, right? So if it is 5 minutes that you practice, From 5, you make it to 6 minutes. Don't go from 5 to 3 minutes. So that way you slowly gain the mind. And mind is just a bundle of habits. Mind has no intention to throw you off the balance. Mind has to be made your friend. In the Gita we come across Uddhared Atmanatmanam Atmanam. Atman is your friend, Atman is your enemy. So you have to make the mind your friend. How to do that? Whatever inputs you give, whatever thoughts, that becomes impressions, and it becomes the habit in which the mind, it becomes the pattern in which the mind works. So keep on injecting the spiritual thoughts and keep on doing sadhana, little by little by little, and then mind will gradually acquire taste. It's like a typhoid patient who's not having taste. So gradually he's given sugar or something. That's the example what Sri Ramakrishna says, that if he loses taste, he's gradually given little by little and he acquires the taste back. Next question is from Isaac Akers. How can one send questions to Mara? Okay, that you can reply here, post a comment, and we will take it up. Next question is from Mr. Shekhar. Pranam Swamiji, I have 2 questions regarding Brahman, pure consciousness. In the first place, if Brahman, pure consciousness, is self-luminous and is nothing but pure knowledge, how can ignorance exist in it? Well, in the ignorant state, in the state of ignorance, we are saying that there is ignorance, right? Has Brahman ever told you that there is ignorance? That is why Maya is anirvachaniya. When we are deluded, we want to get out of it. And when we get out of it, we tell others that, okay, what I thought was, how I lived was not the way it should have been. So that is out of ignorance. And we tell others to get out of ignorance. But from the absolute standpoint, there is nothing called ignorance. It's all leela, it's all a play. So this question of ignorance and how can Brahman have ignorance, all these things are relative questions which can never be answered while we are still ignorant. Okay. Second, the Brahman pure consciousness manifests itself in this world to be conscious of itself as that is its nature. At the same time, Brahman does not have attributes and characteristics. How is this possible? So, consciousness manifests itself in this world to be conscious of itself. And it does not have attributes and characteristics. How is this possible? So, Sri Ramakrishna says Brahman is without characteristics, nirguna and saguna, with characteristics, and much more. So, the mind can never classify what Brahman is. In Bangla, it's said, iti kora jaben. You cannot say Brahman is this much only. Okay? So it can have attributes, it can have everything. Only thing to remember is there is no two. There is nothing else other than Brahman. So seemingly it is having a subject-object relationship. There is a world out there, there is a universe, but if you reduce it further and further, you will realize that ultimately consciousness alone is, nothing else exists. Even scientifically, when you seemingly solid body, if you go further, you find that even in human body, there is vast amount of space compared to the volume of matter or the solid substance. Even between 2 atoms, there is space, like as if there is space between stars and galaxies. That much space is there. So that microcosm is built on the same plan as macrocosm. What is there out there? The same plan you find here also. So that even the seeming solidity is an illusion, right? So at one plane you cannot say, in this gross plane you cannot say we are all empty. Same way, there are different planes of experiencing, and based on that we have to explain things. Next question is from Harsha. Namaskaram. Does Skanda Purana tells to pour boiling water in Sudras, because I'm getting questioned by leftist lecture as it is mentioned in my language book, and tell about Manusmriti discrimination. See, these are all some of the blot which needs to be wiped out, as Swamiji says, wipe out this blot. See, in religion there are two aspects. Unlike other religions, in Hinduism, the Shrutis and Smritis. The Shrutis are what is paramount because it is eternal truth. And the Smritis change according to time and place. So at some point, some people might have coined all these things like discriminating Shudras and all these privileges, which is the cause of degeneration of this caste system. Otherwise, caste was just a class. Everybody had their own dignity initially. Then later on, when these things came up, it all degenerated, and we have gotten rid of this whole system. But the sects and classes will remain. It remains in every country. See, in the West also, if you don't have money, you cannot have privileges like a millionaire or a billionaire, right? Same thing here also. So the birth thing has been replaced with money. That's all. The classes will always be there as long as there is this universe and human beings forming into societies. There will always remain classes. But privileges need to go. Everybody, every work, what they do has its own dignity. We need to recognize it at individual levels and act and respect others. There is no question of not giving access to Vedas, etc. to other castes. That has been the bane of Brahmanas. Swamiji says this is the curse, this is the sin of the Brahmanas, that they kept all this as a secret. That is why Swamiji came. Swami Vivekananda says that broadcast it so that everyone gets access to this highest knowledge in the Shrutis, that is Vedanta, in the Upanishads. Cast it, broadcast across the world so that a fisherman can become a better fisherman, a cobbler can become a better cobbler, a Christian can become a better Christian, a Muslim can become a better Muslim, a Hindu can be a better Hindu by knowing this eternal truth of the Atman within. So we have to acknowledge that at some point we don't have to justify everything. So there has been some degeneration that you don't have to argue with the leftists. The only problem with the socialist structure is they have this ideal of equality, but it was never materialized. You see what is happening in communist countries, in China, in the name of socialist ideals. What is happening? In Russia, what is happening? So ideal communism is not practiced anywhere. It is almost impossible. Only on a spiritual basis can it be practiced. And a social structure, it will be disastrous, as is found. Next question is from Priyanka Chaube. Pranam Maharaj, my name is Priyanka Chaube. I am from Odisha. My question is, what are the signs of ego? How can we identify ego within us? Simply put, ego will always react to what is happening right now. So, right now, am I behaving as an egoistic or a person, or have I transcended the ego? How to know it? It can be known by the way we respond to things, way we respond to what people say, way we respond to whatever that come across in the field of our consciousness. Excuse me. Raga and Dvesha, ego works as getting attracted to some things. It could be ideas, it could be people, it could be circumstances, and getting repelled from the other things, other ideas, other situations. So this is, then if you're doing that, you know that you're working from the level of ego. Ego always tries to create a separate individualistic person. In fact, it's an irony that the word individual means that which cannot be divided. But individual we use in the sense that a separate identity. So there is a separate reference point, me, who gets affected by things, who does these things, who likes these things. So this me as a separate reference point is the ego. And if you observe it and try to be neutral and pay attention, then it cannot survive. Then you can act in this world without having a reference point. Then the universal intelligence will act through you. That is when people will call you, you're egoless, you're unselfish. But you are not going to call, because there is no you from which you are acting. There is no reference point. You become one with the whole. So that is the ideal. So slowly, we can expand ourselves. So how do we know what is the test of spirituality? Swami Ranganathanandaji Maharaj, our 13th president, he used to say, are you growing spiritually? Can you love others? Do you feel peace within, and do you radiate it around you? This is called spiritual growth, stimulated by meditation done inwardly and work done in a spirit of service outwardly. This is how he defined spiritual growth, and this is the test of spirituality. So, these are the questions for today. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat.